Hi everyone! In today's video I'm going to be doing a little bit of extra work on the miniature staircase that I made in a previous video. So if you've watched my previous video where I made this little bookcase that's also a staircase, you may remember that there's a little bit of a gap at the back of the little set of steps. I don't know why that gap's there. When I lined up the steps with the main staircase, I realised that I must have measured incorrectly. I also don't know whether to put something at the side of this little set of steps because there is a gap between the steps and the wall. When I made this little set of steps, I don't know why I ended up with a gap here at the back. And I know that this is lined up correctly with the front of the bookcase, but I don't know if I actually meant to put an extra step behind it. I can't remember why I left a gap, so it might have just been an accident. I need to have a think about what I want to put behind here. Thank you to everybody that left suggestions in the comments in the previous video, because they've helped me to have a think about what exactly to do. So I started by trying to make a little template of the space that I have at the back and at the side of the little set of steps. Now I'm actually trying something a little bit different for this video. So normally I record all of my footage and then record the narration afterwards, which is what I'm doing right now. But I've actually bought this new little microphone and I set it up next to my workspace so that I could talk to you as I was making the miniature. Now obviously this microphone is completely new to me, so it was a bit of an experiment using it for the first time. So apologies if there are any changes in sound quality as I switch over from this microphone to the one that I used whilst I was making the miniature. And hopefully the sound quality will get better as I get more used to using the new microphone. So I'm going to start by making a little template for the bottom of this new piece of furniture that's going to attach to the staircase, and I'm going to switch over microphones now, so I hope that it sounds okay. Okay, so I need to take this piece off here so that the bit of furniture that I'm going to make to go at the side goes right up to the edge of the staircase here. Okay, I hope it comes off really easily. I'm going to be using my Stanley knife, but as I always say, please don't copy me because this is just a hobby and I don't know if I'm always doing things in the safest way possible. I always try to, but I can't guarantee it, so I don't want you to copy me because I'm not an expert. Okay, so I've cut through there and this is glued on, so hopefully it will come off. Oh, yeah, it's come off. There we go. And I always pop the knife back into the Stanley knife. Okay, so that's not come off as neatly as I'd hoped, but that should be okay. Right then. So I have been making the template so that these can still sit as they were before, and so that I can make the little base that my next bit of furniture will go on. I'm not sure if I've measured with the little bit of plinth at the bottom here, so I'm just going to double. Yeah, I think it needs to be a little bit thinner, so that's good because I think that this is just a little bit too small. This was the original bottom bit to the bookcase that I made because it seems to be just the right size. Let's have a little look because that's really convenient if it is, because that means that it's exactly the right size. Doesn't it? Perfect. Right. I am going to cut this out of this piece of wood to make the base that will go behind this step and at the side as well. that's not right, is it? So this little bit is the piece of wood that I took off on the steps. So I need to take that off the template as well, I think. Oh no, I don't. No, I took that piece of wood off, so this piece of wood needs to fill that gap. No, that's correct. Okay. Ooh, that was close. Ooh. Okay, so that hasn't fit. So this little step, I don't know if you can see, but there's a gap here. So this little step is meant to go that far back. But if it goes that far back, this is too far back as well. So I need to take a little bit more of this off. I'm not sure what I've done with my measurements there. I don't know how I've gone wrong. But if I line this edge up, I can see where I need to cut. Okay, that's better. There's a little gap here, making it look not so neat, but I will try and sort that when I add the rest of the structure. Okay, next bit. So I need a back panel now to go behind here. I need it to be long enough to go from here all the way to here. I don't want to choose a piece that's too big because I might be able to use that for a different project where I need a bigger piece of wood. So being careful about how I'm selecting. Let's try these two bits. Okay, that bit would work. So I'm going to cut this line first because it's going against the grain, and then I'll cut this one. In the last video, where I made this piece of furniture, I said that if I had a long piece of wood again, I would always make sure that the longest edge that needs cutting goes with the grain, but I'm not doing that here because I want to use this little piece of wood so that I don't waste one of my bigger pieces. There we go. Now, in the last video I was making this piece of furniture, I asked if anybody had any suggestions for different types of glue to use, and thank you to everybody that left suggestions. One of the reasons why I was asking was because I am actually really happy with the Yoo-Hoo glue that I use, but when I'm gluing really small surface areas like this one, the Yoo-Hoo glue is quite viscous, and I'd like to try a bit more of a runnier glue so that I can spread it a little bit more neatly with something like a cocktail stick or a paintbrush, because the Yoo-Hoo glue comes out quite speedily, comes out of its tube quite quickly, and so it's hard to keep it really neat. So I do love the Yoo-Hoo glue. I just wondered if anybody had any different recommendations, and I got lots of different suggestions, so thank you so much. Haven't bought any other glue yet because I've not been to the shops yet, and also I'm going to wait until my Yoo-Hoo glue has run out so that I don't waste any. So at every stage I'm just going back and checking that everything still fits together before I carry on. So this little piece of furniture here actually sits forwards a bit like this when it's in the doll's house, because the top bit here hooks over the mezzanine level, and it doesn't have any plinth at the back of it, which is why it's just rocking a little bit now, but it fits really securely in the doll's house, but I need to make sure that I hold it at the right angle, otherwise this back piece here might look a little bit out of line. Okay, so it's a really good job that I came and checked because this doesn't fit. Oh, now it's stuck. Okay. Right, I'm going to go trim a little bit off and then come back and put it in again. Right, I'm going to leave it to dry for a little bit. I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. And okay, so I'm now speaking whilst I watched this video back, because I've realised that when I came back after my cup of tea, which took a few hours, I realised that the microphone wasn't switched on, so I'm chatting away here and you can't hear any of it, so I'll talk over the top of this bit. So basically I'd decided that I wanted a little step to go above the little set of stairs that joins the little set of stairs to the main set of stairs. So I needed to decide whether I wanted a step to go all the way across or whether I just wanted a little one that was sort of in line with this set of steps here. I decided that I was just going to make one that was here. So I had to think about whether I wanted it to be curved or square, and I decided that I wanted a little square step. So I made this little border for it, and I painted this in the same green colour as the rest of this wood. And I also needed to make something to go in this little gap here at the side. So I had a couple of options. I was considering a little cupboard, a little bookshelf, some shoe storage. I just decided to start making because I couldn't decide what exactly to make, so I thought if I make the structure, it might help me to imagine what it could be. Unfortunately, this piece of balsa wood was splitting really easily, which meant that this edge wasn't very neat at all. So I decided to make this little top piece into sort of like a landing area. So I also decided to cut the back panel a little bit so that it would finish in line with the step. And I added this little end panel as well. And I also put some oil onto these pieces to make them look the same as the top of all of the other steps. When everything was dry, it was time to glue it all in place. And when I returned to glue it all in place, I did remember to switch my microphone back on. But I then forgot to actually talk through the steps, so I'm just going to carry on narrating over the top now. So here I had to remove a little bit of the excess glue because I didn't want it to go all over the sides that would be visible, and I needed to slot it into place, so I didn't want it to kind of go all over the edges that I'd already painted. I also glued the tiny little step down, and it was really nice to see it all coming together and taking shape, although I still didn't know at this point what the little area to the right of the steps was going to be. I forgot to mention actually that before I put oil on these two pieces of wood, I trimmed a little bit off the L-shaped piece of wood and added a section that just divided the staircase and this new L-shaped piece of wood, just to neaten up that edge that had split when I'd cut the balsa wood. Next I wanted to find some pieces of wood that I could use as trim and plinth along the sides just to give it a nice neat edge. So I cut all of the pieces that I needed to size, and I did then paint them and leave them to dry. Once they were dry, it was time to glue them all into their correct places. However, I didn't feel like this was looking very neat. I felt like I could see lots of gaps in between the joins between the pieces of wood, and I felt like the bookcase that I'd made in the previous video was a lot neater. I also didn't really like this piece of wood that I'd added here. I wish that I'd used some oil on the top to make it match the rest of the step. I did consider putting a little banister there, but that wouldn't have left enough room to walk for the full length of the step. So I had a little think about how I could make this a little bit neater. I wondered if putting an extra piece of wood at the top here would help, just so that everything was the same height. And I did think that it would help a little bit, so I decided to paint this piece of wood and to add it to the top here. And I also painted an extra piece of wood and left it to dry, and then tried using some oil over the top of it just to see what would happen if I did use oil over the top of the piece of wood that was in the middle of that landing step, just in case I could paint over it and disguise it. But the paint had kind of made the wood waterproof and the oil just sat on top, so that wasn't really an option. I still didn't think it looked neat enough, so I considered adding a little door to go here. But for the little door to fit, I had to remove this piece of wood that I'd added earlier. But this didn't look very good because you could see the gap where there was the little bit of floor underneath the piece of wood that I'd just added. So I thought about a different option. I decided to make a little fascia that would cover all of the pieces of wood that I'd added, so that it would hide all of the joins. I had to cut a tiny little piece out of this corner just to go over the plinth that was going around the steps. And that fit really nicely. And then I decided to cut a hole out of the middle so that I could have either a little shelf or a little area for some extra storage. I don't know whether to put a little sort of cushion inside and make a cat bed to go inside here. What do you think? If you've got any ideas for what I could use this little section of this landing area for, please do let me know in the comments. Before painting this, I did try and rub out some of the pencil lines, just in case they would show through the paint. Thankfully, the pencil hadn't left any indentations in the wood. I think if this bit had been balsa wood, it probably would have left some marks, but this was a piece of plywood. I did decide to use my brad awl to just score some lines in the corners to make it look like these had been 4 separate pieces of wood that had been cut at an angle and joined together, because I thought it would make it look a little bit more realistic. When it was dry, it was time to add it to this piece of furniture to see if it helped make the area look a little bit neater. I do think that it was an improvement, but I do wonder whether maybe the edges of this piece of wood needed to be a little bit thinner to match the rest of the bookcase. But I couldn't really do that because I think if they'd have been thinner, it would have showed the pieces of wood underneath. I removed this piece and re-glued it just because it wasn't sitting correctly. And then I just wanted to do some final finishing touches because I could still see some joins from above. So I decided to add some filler to the areas that I could, just to neaten everything off. Normally when I mix up the filler mixture, I make far too much. So on this occasion, I really tried to make sure that I only used just as much as I needed. I even added some to the areas underneath this little piece of furniture because I like to make sure that everything's finished off nicely. So I left that to dry, and then when it was dry I came back to give it all a sand. I found that this little extension to this staircase and bookcase took a really long time to make because of all of the drying time that was needed. So I kept adding a little bit, then painting it and leaving it to dry, and then adding a little bit more, gluing it, leaving it to dry, then putting some filler on, leaving it to dry, then painting it, and that's what took all of the time. I used a little file and also a brad awl just to try and take off any excess filler from the little areas in the corners. And then as a final step, I gave everything another coat of paint. And then, of course, as it was drying, it was time to tidy up. So this is the end result. What do you think the little extension on the right hand side should be used for? I'm thinking that it needs a little cushion in there and a little cat. Alternatively, I could add a door to it to make it into a little cupboard, but I'd love to hear any other ideas that you have. So let's put it into the doll's house and see how it looks. Hopefully it fits. Okay, it fit really well, and I really like the fact that it goes all the way up to the wall because it looks like a purpose-built fitted piece of furniture now. And I also like the little landing area because I think I'm going to make some miniature coat pegs to sort of put on the wall above the little landing, so that can be an area for coats. Thank you so much for watching. Please do let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next video. Hope you have a lovely day. Bye!